So people from around the world are joining Ukraine's war effort. That's according to the Ukrainian government. More than 16,000 international fighters have volunteered. Several of those people are Americans. Tony Dokoupil reports on that.
We landed in Warsaw and saw them immediately. 3 Americans headed for Ukraine. Ready to die, they say, in a fight for survival against the Russians.
And what's the plan?
The plan to help to save the lives of Ukrainian people.
Andriy Penchek is a licensed truck driver who was born in Ukraine, but he launched this particular mission from Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And while we read in his local paper that he's never been in a battle and used personal savings to pay for his tickets, he told us the hardest part was leaving behind his 3 young children.
I didn't say goodbye. I said, see you.
You said see you later?
Yeah.
While U.S. soldiers are staying out of Ukraine, everyday Americans like this are not specifically restricted from going in, says acting U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Christina Kaveen.
What does the American government say to Americans who are volunteering for combat in Ukraine?
We encourage all Americans not to travel to Ukraine right now, and those Americans who are in Ukraine to leave Ukraine because it is not safe.
Closer to the border, however, we caught up with bipartisan leaders of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Gregory Meeks and Michael McCall, who had just seen the war's human toll up close.
How do each of you feel about our fellow countrymen joining the fight there?
I think that what they see and what people around the world seeing is democracy's at stake. And as President Zelensky said to us, this is not just a fight for Ukrainian people. This is a fight for all of us. It's just starting here.
Ukrainians have inspired the world, and these freedom fighters, I call them.
But on Thursday, Russia's military warned foreign fighters they'd be treated as mercenaries, not as protected combatants under international law.
As far as I see, civilians are not protected by humanitarian law, so I don't take much credence to anything they say.
We spotted Christopher Callis in full body armor walking toward the checkpoint into Ukraine. Before the war, this trained pastry chef with no military experience had been splitting his time between the New York culinary scene and Ukraine. But after evacuating his Ukrainian wife and baby to safety in Portugal, he decided to go back. Not to fight, he says, but to help others.
So you're Ukrainian by marriage, but on paper you're an American about to enter Ukraine to join the war effort.
Yes.
Are you worried?
I am absolutely worried, yes. But I'm more worried for the people there who are not able to leave.
Is this something you're prepared to die for?
Yes. I want my child to have a Ukraine to go back to when she's grown up.
And we lost contact with Chris after he went over the border for a couple days, but we can report that just today, a few hours ago, in fact, we heard from him. No pictures, no location, but he said he is in deep. That's a direct quote, in deep. As for Andriy, I want to say Andre, but it's a Ukrainian Andriy. He did send us a picture. You see it there. He crossed the border with his wife's father and brother. And if you take a closer look there on the car, he also brought along his American flag. So he is over the border in Ukraine from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, guys, still representing the U.S. of A.
You know, Tony, it strikes me that this is not new. This is not uncommon. During World War II, American pilots did join the British war effort before the United States entered the war in 1941, and it happened even before that in World War I. But your reporting has left a chilling note, which is that the Russians would not see foreigners that are assisting the Ukrainians as soldiers. They would see them as mercenaries, which would mean that they aren't covered under Geneva Conventions. It didn't seem to bother the young man that you spoke with.
No, it did bother him in part because he had no expectation that anybody right now in Ukraine, civilian, military, so-called mercenary, would have that sort of protection. But the statement from the Russian military was chilling. It came out late last week, and they said that any foreign mercenary, that was their word, coming to help Ukraine would, quote, not enjoy the status of prisoner of war. And people hear that phrase, not enjoy the status of prisoner of war, and think it means they will be executed. They will not be captured. they will be killed. So there is a potential chilling effect. But by the way, Vlad, you're very right to point out that there is a history of Americans joining conflicts in other countries. It does not always end well. Thousands died, in fact, after World War II in the battle. My history is going to get a little tangled here, against the fascists in Spain, I believe it was.
That's true.
For whom the bell tolls. It takes that for its plot. But it's also noteworthy that so far, Congress, the American government, has passed no strict regulation or law preventing or requiring neutrality of Americans. If you go all the way back to the 1790s, there was a requirement of neutrality in certain foreign conflicts. So for now, anyway, it is free game, open season for any American who wants to go over there.
I wonder, though, Tony, if there's a concern that when you have these sort of foreign fighters, Americans, for example, that this could almost be seen as an act of war by Russia, that at some point you have American citizens over there. What if they need help getting out? What if America feels compelled to do something, that this could actually make the situation much worse?
There is that potential, but that would only be if Russia were already a plain dealer and a fair dealer in all of this. I think the history of this short conflict so far has already given us many examples of the Russian government making claims that are easily disprovable by observable reality. So I don't think that the Russians claiming that an American volunteer fighter was somehow a breach of NATO or an attack by NATO would be all that believable for the international community. The credibility of the Russian government at this juncture is just not strong enough. But guys, I will mention, if you have the moment for it, that one of the people, and this is on the subject of disinformation, one of the women crossing the border here that we spoke to today told us, if you can believe it or not, after 8 days in a subway shelter, she told her brother in Moscow about the bombing of Kharkiv, and it was his sister's word against the Russian government and Russian media. The brother did not believe his own flesh and blood. He went with Putin, and the Russian news says there's no war going on. She's not telling the truth. So the power of the information bubble in Russia is extreme, even if what's coming out of it is easily disprovable and not believed by the wider world.
Well, Vladimir Putin has been working very hard to shut down social media accounts or websites to control the narrative as much as possible. He hasn't been successful outside of Russia, but inside Russia, it may be a very different story. Tony, thank you very much.
I was actually, my jaw dropped, Tony, when you mentioned that earlier, that you would have a sibling, flesh and blood, who would say, look, I'm in dire straits here, we're suffering, we are being bombed, and your brother would say, that's not true. According to our politician, that's not true.
Well, I spoke to a Ukrainian mayor today, just very close to the border with Belarus, and they're very, very friendly back and forth, as you can imagine. There are family members that live across, and he has spoken to friends, people that he knows in Belarus, and they have said to him, why are you starting a civil war in Ukraine? They believe the Russian narrative that Ukrainians are fighting each other. So it just gives you a sense of how powerful misinformation can be. Yeah, totally. Tony, thank you so much.
It's really astounding. It's really astounding. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tony.